Forward workshop series. We're so glad to have you for what will undoubtedly be an informative and interesting session today. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, or perhaps who just haven't been here in a while, my name is Dana Adams, and I am the program manager for Charitable Ventures. The program team is so proud to host this workshop series, which is designed to give our friends and neighbors in the nonprofit sector of Orange County and beyond a space to learn, to talk about issues and ideas that directly impact our work and collaborate. So these workshops take place quarterly on topics ranging from women's leadership to mental health in the workplace in light of the pandemic to today's topic, how media partnerships help advance your mission. We hope that you'll continue to be part of this conversation with us. We'll be sure to keep you informed on the dates and the topics for the upcoming workshops. But again, thank you for being here today. And then this morning, before we fully launch in, I'd like to take care of just a few more housekeeping items. So you probably all have your microphones muted as you come in. We're going to ask that you leave them muted during the presentation. This will help us to minimize background noise and ensure that we can all hear. You are welcome to have your cameras on, though. We always love that. And secondly, you probably noted that this session is being recorded. So we will send a link to that recording along with a link to our survey and some helpful resources in an email after the session. Speaking of the survey, we do ask that you take a few minutes to complete it after the workshop. It's just a few questions, maybe 5 minutes, and it really helps us immensely to ensure that the quality and the content of these sessions are serving you the best. So we'll put the link to that in the chat box at the end of the presentation. And like I said, we'll include it in the follow-up email. And finally, please use the chat box. So we will help moderate that during the presentation. All of your questions and thoughts are welcome. We will have time at the end of the session for Q&A for all of your questions then as well. So you'll be invited to turn on your cameras and mics. We'll take down the presentation and you can join the conversation. But if something comes up and you don't want to wait until the end of the session, please use the chat box. We're happy to help facilitate those questions as well. So, okay, that is it for me. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to our fabulous marketing manager, Annie Jang, who's going to tell us a little bit about our guest speakers today. Annie.
Thanks, Dana. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited about hosting 2 industry experts today from Cornerstone Communications. I'd like to introduce you to Mike Cisneros. He is the account executive and brings over 20 years of experience in communications, journalism, and media relations. Mike currently supports various clients across Orange County, such as First 5 OC, Hoag Hospital, and Capistrano United School District with social media, strategic communications, and more. We also have Elise James in the room, the Senior Director of Content, who brings over 15 years of experience working with clients in nonprofit, government, and education industries, supporting their public relations and communication strategy. Elise has helped increase brand awareness, manage social media accounts, and develop content for various clients across Orange County. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mike and Elise. Take it away.
All right, thank you so much for having us. I am sorry, it took me just a second there to get myself unmuted. It is so nice to see you all. Thank you so much to Charitable Ventures for inviting us to do this workshop. We hope you'll find this presentation informative and interesting. Today we're going to focus on the basics. So we'll talk about media and public relations and try to give you an idea of what this is and why media and public relations are important. There's a lot of information that we packed into here, so we're going to leave a lot of time for questions at the end. So please hold your questions or type them into the chat and we will try to answer all of them. We also have our contact information listed on the very last slide, so feel free to reach out to us directly. All right, we'll get started. We're starting with the real basic question here. What is media relations? Media and public relations, excuse me, I will use those terms interchangeably, although traditionally media relations would be limited to the relationship with members of the media, and then public relations expands that communication to the general public. So it's really just all about communications. We help spread the word about your company and help you build a positive reputation. A big part of our job is to have good relationships with members of the media. In public relations, we help elevate your company through creative storytelling, creating branded materials, and messaging that will resonate with your target audience, and then sharing that message with the public and with the media, which in today's world includes social media and all that that entails. So let's check out this example on this next slide. Media and public relations help build your brand to be a trusted source. So we have our marketing man here talking about himself, while at the same time encouraging people to share the positive experiences that they've had with you and your nonprofit. So that both supports and verifies the message that you're sending yourself and through your trusted friends and people in your network. So marketing is saying, hey, look at us, look how great we are. And in public relations, we're using a trusted voice to help build your reputation and spread the word sort of more organically. Okay, we're ready for the next slide. Oh, actually, wait, go back. I'll keep going on here. Thank you. So you might be wondering, why is media relations important? Unlike traditional marketing, public relations relies on media outlets, the public, and social media to organically create a conversation that includes you and your company or your nonprofit, your group, your volunteer base, etc. This involves robust communication and outreach to the right people. Now you'll notice that I said to your audience and to the right people a few times. So targeting the people that you're trying to target is a big part of this also. Many consider an unpaid mention in a newspaper or in a TV news spot to be more valuable than a paid advertisement in creating awareness of your organization and what you do and building that reputation. All right, now I'm going to turn this over to Mike to share how a great media strategy can benefit you. Next slide, please.
Great, thanks, Elise. Good morning, everyone. So now that you've got, kind of an idea about what media relations is, and again, we're kind of giving, the basics and kind of how it can help you. Let's kind of figure out how to put it into practice. So the core concept really with media relations and public relations is a core question, and it's, why should I care about this? That's what you need to think about before you start anything. And it's what someone who's getting your message is asking themselves, when they see whatever communications is being put out. And think about your personal life. When you're reading news or you're scrolling through social media, you're subconsciously asking yourself these questions, why should I care about this? And that's really what, we're trying to do here with media relations. So the key is when you're first starting out and trying to come up with a strategy of how to target media and audience, first you want to ask yourself, what makes your group unique? There's thousands of nonprofits out there, thousands of organizations, some of which are providing similar services. So in what way do you stand out? What are you providing that no one else does? This can be services, this can be products. It could even be people in your organization who have unique skill sets. Maybe your leadership is really something that you want to highlight. And it doesn't even matter if it's something that's really niche. The key is figuring out exactly what is unique about your company and what you guys do. Again, what sets you apart? Why should someone care about what you're doing? Again, you have a passion for your organization and what you're doing. The key is now figuring out how to make other people care about what you guys are doing. And so when you think of kind of a strategy like that, it can be something as small as creating these like one-page communications, such as like a flyer or a postcard or like a mailer, something that you're putting out there. It can be content that you're trying to figure out what you want to share on social media, or it can be something bigger or more long-term, something over a month or a year, some aspect of your organization or some focus that your group is trying to highlight, and that could be a strategy that you try to figure out. So the next slide. And so now that you've kind of gone through these questions of why should people care, what makes my group unique, how do you use that information now? And here's just some of the ways in which you'd want to promote to either media or some kind of targeted audience. And usually the first thing that people think of for these are just events. Well, I have an event coming up, but there's other outside the box kind of things that maybe you're not thinking of to promote, but might be newsworthy in your group or organization. And now some of those are, like initiatives or campaigns. Again, those are maybe you're focusing on helping the homeless for this quarter or for this year. Maybe you're focused on, whatever it is that you are. That could be something that you might want to highlight in the media or to promote somehow. Again, events are always something that's worth promoting. Maybe you're launching a new product, or maybe you have a new website that's going to make it easier for people to engage or interact with you. Maybe you have a new service that only your organization provides. Maybe you have changes in the board or staffing. Maybe you brought in someone who you guys think is really great, who's really innovative, who thinks differently, and that's just someone that you want to promote. Again, events, pop-ups, appearances, awards or accolades. You might be recognized for something. Some partner gave you an award. That could be something that you want to highlight. And then even like thought leadership stuff, such as you feel very passionately about something that's happening or not happening, in your local community. Maybe you want to write an op-ed. Maybe you want to write something that'll appear in another publication that is, that you want to kind of get out there. And so these are just some things, like I said, that you want to kind of think outside the box to put out there that might be newsworthy. Next slide. All right, so knowing all that, we kind of wanted to give you guys an idea of what the Orange County media landscape is like. And the first thing is, everyone, like I said, everyone likes to say the media as if it's, one big monolith. That's not the case. I mean, each media outlet is completely different. The reporters are different. They like different things. They like to get pitched a different way. They may focus on, one thing over another. You'll kind of learn this over time. But the main thing to remember is that Orange County media is a lot smaller than they used to be. Both me and Elise actually used to work at the Orange County Register. And, even 5-10 years ago, they had a reporter for every single Orange County city, like even La Palma had a reporter. And now that's just not the case. But it doesn't matter if it's, the Register or the LA Times or KTLA or whoever it is that you're, looking at, they all just don't have the same staff they used to. And so, which means, that every reporter, every editor, every photographer that they have there, has a lot of things on their plate. And so they really need to pick and choose what it is that they cover. And so that's why it's really important for you that we're trying to hammer down here to really figure out what's newsworthy about your organization and what you do and what it is that you want to promote. Because like I said, there's not, unlimited resources out there to kind of cover what you want. And so, another thing here that's kind of changed the media landscape is there's a different way in which people view their news. Before it was you turned on the news, you got your newspaper, then internet came and now you're going on news sites. Now like that still happens, but at a much lower rate. I mean, now there's blogs, there's different news channels, there's YouTube, and then social media obviously has made a huge difference. You can read news now on Facebook, Apple News, you can, all these different types of social media platforms has just completely changed the way that people view their news. I mean, I think you guys would probably know from your personal experience that that's the case. And so, like I said, because of that media landscape, we just want to, point out that you need to have realistic expectations too about what it is you're putting out there. And it's kind of a learning experience as well. That, you might pitch something you think is fantastic and that everyone should know about this and maybe you won't get, 10 media outlets to your event or to your, thing like that. Or you might, not think something is very newsworthy. You're like, well, maybe let's put it out there, and you do get, a bunch of media outlets. Again, part of the media is just relationship building and kind of figuring out, like I said, who's the right reporter, who's the right contact, things like that. And these things, like I said, just happen over time, and you'll kind of learn these things. Next slide.
Okay, so now that we've talked about our sad shrinking media landscape, we can talk about what we can do within this space. And I want to add on a little bit to what Mike said about reaching out to media, that there have been times where we've pitched something that we thought was super important and we only get a few bites. And then other times where it's just a slow news day and TV news will pick up something that normally you'd think they wouldn't. And so there's some element of luck to it too, in that I've had great events, really newsworthy, super interesting, where we had TV news signed up and then there's a huge fire or there's a shooting or something, and then they all get called out. And, so you kind of have to be aware that that's just how it is because of the lack of staff. There is some element of people getting called away, especially in television news, a little less so with newspapers and magazines. So there are a lot of things that you can do to get the word out and to share this information about your organization. Our first tip, given the media landscape, is to curate your own media list. Media list is a frequently updated, that's key right there, document that contains contact information, topic preferences, the ways that media like to be contacted. There are some that prefer text, some that prefer email. So just getting to know these folks and how they want their information to come in, their company, and names of folks that might be interested in the information you have to share. So for each topic, you're going to first determine who your audience is, and then look for places where your target audience overlaps with a particular media audience. So one example might be if you get a large grant from a local hospital that will connect underserved kids with medical services. So in this example, you would want to connect with media outlets that follow nonprofits. You can send your information out to those that cover children's services. And in this case, you would have an overlap with medical reporters as well. And so that kind of broadens that audience. So you want to make sure that you're considering all potential outlets that might possibly be interested in what you have to share. And keeping that list updated is an easy first step, so that when something does happen that's newsworthy and timely, you know right away who to go to when you have information to share. If there's an event coming up, if you have a change in board members, or just something that happens spur of the moment that you want to share right away. And having those contacts handy is the first piece. Then you also have to get them interested in helping you share your story. So it's vital to pitch whatever it is that you're pitching, to pitch it in a way that gets these people to open your email and to be interested in covering your event or your whatever it is. And lastly, and I think Mike mentioned this also, don't oversaturate them. There is a balance for how often to contact, and you don't want to annoy them. You don't want to end up in their spam box. You have to find that balance of how often to reach out. They're overworked, they're overpitched. And so you have to find a way to really just stand out from the noise. And that's the key here. And it's difficult. It's a hard thing to do, and it can take time. And given all of these things that maybe sounds a little bit bleak. It isn't as bad as it sounds. Media is just a first step. There are other ways that you can build where you can control the communication. So you have your website, social media, blogs, newsletters. If you have a weekly, monthly, or even just whenever we have news to share newsletter to where people can sign up on your website or sign up through social media, those are great. Another tactic is leveraging your existing partnerships to help you spread the word. So each group that you're in contact with, they have their own audience. And when they share your information, you get that many more eyes on whatever it is that you're sharing. So those can be very powerful to leverage as well. Your partnerships can include nonprofit partners, groups that you work with currently, groups you've worked with in the past, or even like completely new groups. There might be a large company that has sponsorship availability, or where you just want access to their audience. And there's always potential there to go to someone that, Honda Center, for example, someone that has a huge built-in audience and say, hey, would you mind sharing this stuff for us? And see if you can build those relationships too. And once you've got this all set up, you're sending things out to the media. They seem like they're getting interested. Then you want to determine who your spokesperson will be. Now, this could be a CEO. If you have a dedicated PIO or a public information officer, or dedicated media spokesperson, that's fantastic. Or even better, sometimes the best person is whoever at your organization knows the topic the best and just is passionate about it, because that passion translates. So if your CEO is removed from the thing that you're trying to get the word out about, it might be better to have the person in charge of that project be the one to speak to media. So whoever this person is, they need to have all the necessary information and background about the topic, and they need to be comfortable talking to the media. And so that can be kind of a hard one if people are shy or a little media shy. There is media training that can help with that. And that includes practice questions, tips on talking in front of a camera, how to use a microphone, clothing choices, additional preparation that help people feel more comfortable in that role. A lot of media do not share their questions in advance. And so doing that advanced preparation can be really helpful in making everyone just feel comfortable and answering off the cuff questions. Rarely some will share some questions, but typically like to keep it open to kind of follow wherever the conversation goes, so that if you say something interesting that they weren't expecting, they can follow that route. And oftentimes that ends up being their lead or the most interesting thing that they lead in with. So you want to kind of keep that conversation open and friendly and casual. And then if you can, you also want to identify someone that your group is helping who can speak about how great your organization is. So for example, if you're providing food for at-risk families, you might want to find a family who's willing to share their experience, how your organization helped them, in times of need, and can talk positively about your group. And that's sort of that's your trusted source from, if we go back to that first slide, the woman on the bottom half, like she's your trusted source and trusted voice, and that's who this person would be. Okay, we're ready for the next slide.
Okay, so like I said, as part of kind of figuring out, what you're promoting is newsworthy, who you're trying to reach and how to do it, kind of what Elise was saying at the end there. Another aspect of kind of finding ways to make your story compelling. Storytelling is kind of big. It's been a big way of life throughout history. I mean, if you've ever seen a good story on the news or on social media, it kind of really resonates because, everyone loves a good story. And just similar to, how a story, needs a good character or the right plot, can really make a difference. The same kind of applies to, like I said, what you're promoting or what you're pitching. How can you make your story more compelling by trying to find a face or a person that really, shows off what it is that you're trying to convey. So say you're promoting just a fundraiser event, is there a person or people or family whose story you can tell that just really encapsulates, what your event is all about? Or say you're doing something, you're focusing on a lack of childcare in Orange County. Are there parents out there that are affected, childcare providers, that you can turn to that can kind of be the face of what it is that you're pushing? Like I said, these are just another part of media relations and getting your message out there. And again, just really hammering home, why this is important and why people should care about this. Elise?
Okay, we're going to run through an example. So if anyone wants to, I don't know if you can like raise your hand or type in the chat, whatever's going to be the easiest. So in our example, we'll say there's going to be a grand opening for a new homeless shelter, and we want to promote this event. So based on what we've talked about already, what are some of the first steps that you think you should take? Does anyone have ideas of what we could do? And I'll pause for a minute and let you guys mull that over for a sec. Okay, anyone?
Don't be shy, guys.
All right, Scott says build support among neighbors. Yes, that's good. Especially for something like a homeless shelter where you may have neighbors who are not in support. Identify target audience, Jen, yes. Capture data on current homelessness spikes and locate a family who's experiencing homelessness and a success story of a family now housed. Yes, Julie, that's awesome. Meryl says find someone who really needs help to tell a story. Yes. Anyone else? Floridel, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Get community leaders involved and on board with your mission. Yes, that is important too, especially in this scenario. Julie, find the human impact. Yay! Family, children, how lives are impacted. Yes, that's what's going to resonate with your audience. People want that, pull the heartstrings. That's great. Linda says, is it using a space that has historical relevance? Ooh, I like that. Now space that is being used for good. That is awesome, out of the box thinking. Yes, anything like that, anything that makes it unique or just more to add more interest. These are awesome answers. You guys rock. Okay, so I have my kind of little list here, but I think you've hit most of these things. So I would add just figuring out what media outlets will help you spread this message, and then looking for non-media partnerships. So Florida mentioned community leaders, so that's kind of falls into that area too. And then you guys got the face of someone who will be the spokesperson, and then someone at your organization too who will be the spokesperson who can talk about this. There are times that media will call and say, oh, hey, we can't make it to your event, but we need to talk to someone in the next hour. We want to do a story on this. And if you don't have someone available, they're going to move on. So it is good to have someone who can kind of jump at the chance to talk to media when that happens. And most of the time, that's not going to be the family or the group that's being helped. That's going to be someone within your organization. All right, so now that we've identified all of these really awesome story angles and this kind of background info, we can get started on the actual messaging itself. So that can include a media release ahead of the event, letting people know that this is happening, posts on your social media, your blog, your newsletter, etc. Arranging for coverage of the event itself because of the sort of unpredictable nature of getting media out to particular events. It can be beneficial to have your own photographer there, or to have your own writer, somebody who can write stuff up for your own sites and provide those photos and video to the media. We've had several instances where I've gotten a call from say KTLA, and they say, hey, something came up and we can't make it to the event, but if you can send us B-roll, then we can do something on it. And where we've been, oh my gosh, we have to scramble and try to get somebody out with, try to get a videographer out. So if you can have someone out already that's taking some B-roll, even just for social media, like those few second clips, that can be really helpful in getting coverage, especially for television. And then having someone dedicated social media sharer the day of, where they can post in real time, can be helpful depending on what the event is, obviously. And then after the event, it's not over. You can send out a media release saying, hey, we had this great successful event, or we've you know, completed our funding round, and we want to, you know, share that information with you also. So there's multiple opportunities here before, during, and after, where you can share that info with media and with the public. So drafting a media release after the event to share how great you did, to provide photos and B-roll video in case they are interested. And then posting those pieces also to your social media, tagging all of the relevant folks who might share that information, updating your blog, your website, your newsletter, and then also important to share with your key stakeholders. So that might be, you know, your board or your main funders, your supporters. You want to let them know in all of these phases of whatever your initiative is that, you know, this is happening. It happened, and here's all of the information that they can share as well. And now, since I've talked about social media, but we haven't really delved in yet, I'm going to turn this over to Mike for a little social media 101.
Okay, so we talked about how the media landscape is changing, and social media really is one of the biggest reasons why. You know, a recent poll showed that 3.6 billion with a B people use social media worldwide, and that number is probably still low. It's growing every day, obviously. And just social media is one of the main ways that people prefer to take their news, like I said before. And so, you know, the one good thing about that is, you know, on its face, social media is, you know, is open to anybody. So everyone's kind of on a level playing field. So obviously you can get your message out on social media just the way you want it, with your wording, and it's not going to be, you know, changed in any way. And that there are some paid opportunities on social media. There's digital ads, you can boost posts, things like that, where you can increase the number of people who actually see your content. And it doesn't necessarily, you know, this doesn't have to mean you're spending thousands of dollars on social media. You know, even, you know, 10, 50 bucks, you know, can make somewhat of a difference. And especially if you're really trying to target a certain audience, it can really help. And it can also, you know, find, if you're looking for like volunteers, you're looking for people to help. Social media is a big component of that. And then just last thing on the social media is, for your group, you should really have some kind of policy or just some kind of vision on how you're going to use social media, what kind of content you're going to put out there. You might even think about how you want your employees to use social media. I mean, I think we've all heard stories of, you know, people going crazy on social media, and then they look back and see, well, where does this person work at? Or, you know, find all their organizations, and it reflects badly on the organization, obviously. So that's just something to think about as you use social media and try to put your content out there. Next slide. And so I just wanted to talk about like what some of the main social media platforms are and kind of what they're used for. I mean, Facebook is the, you know, 100-pound gorilla in the room, basically. You know, Facebook is the biggest and reaches the furthest, has the most users, et cetera, et cetera. And it's used for everything, like any kind of content that you could possibly have that it's good for, content, photos, videos, events, whatever it is, Facebook is the king, basically. Twitter is more kind of a real time, kind of happening right now. So if you have an event that's going on kind of in real time or now, Twitter is definitely a good place to share that information. And it doesn't mean you can't share other things, but people kind of use it as to see what's going on right now. LinkedIn is good for more for business and networking, but that's a good place where you can find partners, you can find volunteers, you can find people with kind of shared values and goals for what you're working on and what you guys believe in. Instagram is owned by Facebook, so you'll see that there's a lot of easy cross-posting. You can share things on Facebook and LinkedIn, Instagram easily. But Instagram is definitely a more visual medium. So it's definitely more photos, more videos, like things that are aesthetically pleasing. You'll just see that there's more. They have a lot of filters that you can use to try to manipulate images and make them nicer and look more beautiful, et cetera, et cetera. And then TikTok is more of a newer platform. It's more like very short videos, do hashtag challenges, things like that. It's primarily used more like teenagers, younger people. But really with all these platforms, there's advantages for different things. Like I said, I kind of ran through like what each of them kind of does well, so you can kind of shape your content to kind of to go under those mediums, basically. And like I said, these are just kind of like the main ones right now. There's literally 1,000 other platforms, like Snapchat, Clubhouse, Telegram. I mean, there's like a million that you probably never even heard of. But I kind of wanted to get an idea of what social media that you guys use in your life. So I guess if you have your cameras on, or you can use the raise your hand emoji. I just want to get an idea of what you guys use in your life. So I guess raise your hand if you have a Facebook. Okay. Seeing a lot of hands. Again, that's why Facebook is king. Okay, how many use Twitter? Okay. A few more hands. Okay, who's on LinkedIn? Okay. More hands. Okay, how about Instagram? Who's on Instagram here? Okay, just almost as many as Facebook. Okay, and how many of you brave souls are on TikTok? Okay, I see a few. All right, that's awesome. So like I said, that's just something to just keep an eye on the different platforms to really figure out, what moves the needle for your organization. I think, if you only could focus on one, I would say Facebook. But I think that's a kind of an organizational thing that you need to figure out of what really moves the needle for your group. So next slide. And so, like I said, I think we tried to go over the basics here. And I know we packed a lot into it, so I'm sure that we left a lot of space available here for questions. So we're definitely open for any questions that you have.
Thank you all so much. Linda has a question. I've got the chat up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. We use a scheduler to make our posts, but I'm finding lately that the platforms themselves are kind of kicking back and not encouraging use of those kinds of tools, because that's not really what those platforms are designed for. But they help people like us who want to keep our messaging consistent. Do you have any tips for increasing reach using a scheduler, or for being able to schedule on multi-platforms? Is there a better app out there than the one I'm using? I use Hootsuite.
Oh, yes. I used to use Hootsuite as well. Facebook in particular has a long history of pushing back against those schedulers. They have developed their own scheduler. I wish that I had a tip to stop you from using theirs and continue using the scheduler, but really the best way to increase eyeballs on your content is to just give in and use Facebook's scheduler.
Okay.
It is slightly more inconvenient, but you should probably see a little bump in your numbers if you switch to doing it that way.
Okay.
Yeah,
Or
and
was
we,
someone recommends later.com.
Yeah, that's good. There's a later IO also that helps with scheduling for emails.
yeah,
Oh,
and I'll just
Jasmine
chime
brings
in.
up a survey in there. I see in the chat there's the survey. Yeah, sorry, Mike, jump on in.
I would say I'll just throw it, like, the reason it's so difficult is because the social media companies don't want you to schedule. They want you to be, well, I mean, they literally want you to be on their platforms at all times. And
Right.
so that's why they make it so difficult to be able to do that. And so there's I mean, Hootsuite is, I think you're not going to find one they're always going to have some pros and cons. Nothing is perfect. So you're always going to have some of these schedulers that work great for some, but not as great for others. And that's because the social media platforms have made it that way.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
What other
Okay, I
questions?
see, Julie has a question.
I have a question about just the current culture in the media and all of the social unrest and how best to kind of protect and promote your mission. So at Teen Kids, we work with kids and police and firefighters and have for 20 years. And of course, now in today's culture with policing and all those issues, it's so interesting because of the impact of that piece that is such a big issue in our country. So how do you manage messaging when current events could either put it in a box and kind of change what we do, but also there's a great interest in, maybe your mission because of a current event. And so how do you recommend working on the PR and the marketing front in a situation like that?
Very carefully. I help run Behind the Badge, and we run into that exact issue frequently.
We've been in there a lot of times. Yeah, I love Behind the Badge, but yeah, it's so.
Yeah, send us your stuff. We're happy to share it. Yeah, it's difficult. I would say the most important thing is just keeping a very careful eye on what the public conversation is at any given time. There is still a lot of support for fire and police, public safety agencies, law enforcement in general. There is still a big support base for those things, but the timing of what you're sharing is going to be important. And the perception of a particular organization is going to be more important now than it was in the past. So I would say just being very, very attuned into the public conversation.
I think that probably goes for like all of us, many of us, that it might, whether it's policing. I mean, we teach in Compton and New York. We actually focus on low income, vulnerable communities. So our mission isn't even that. It's so hard in this climate, regardless of what I do or what anyone else does, with the kind of issues and the polarization today from a media standpoint, that you actually, that isn't even, we're not a police organization, but it's a piece of what we do. So it in this climate, it becomes what you do. So I just was wondering for all of us here, just to have any advice on navigating the current climate. And it's been tough.
Yeah.
And some of it is, go ahead, Elise, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I think it is important just to be more careful than ever, like examine what you're putting out from every single angle, and just have that sort of, if someone were anti whatever it is we're doing, where are the holes they're going to poke? What are they going to come back at us with? just, I mean, even a little bit to paranoia, just, just to be extra careful that you've examined all of those things before you put information out, so that you're comfortable with whatever someone who may be against something you do, so that you know how you'll handle that. And just kind of having a plan going into it and feeling comfortable with what you're putting out, that that it is indestructible. But the current climate does make that more complicated. Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I would say just on top of that, like, you know, sometimes it's important to actually, you know, maybe look at what the other side or whoever is criticizing you, like, you know, is there something that we can use from that actually? Like, it, you know, are they maybe right on some of this stuff? Like, you know, can we do something in our messaging to kind of combat that, or to be a little more transparent, I guess, you know, if that, you know, helps our mission, to be more transparent on what it is we're doing and what that relationship is, or what, you know, whatever it is that we can do. Or is there a story that we can tell out of that really, you know, that kind of transforms that into something that is more positive, you know? That's just something to do with that. And then, I mean, on social media, I mean, some of these things you just can't control, right? Like, so social media has been really bad for a while now and really divisive. And so sometimes you just have to decide, you know, do I want to invest my time in dealing with, you know, the comments or whatever, or not, you know, or just how much time that I want to invest in this. Because also life is too short too. So, and we all have, you know, our personal lives and things like that. So yeah, like Elise said, it's kind of a balance, and it's difficult, but the key is just to be, you know, open and to whatever can help your mission, and to be, you know, truthful.
Chelsea has a question about managing multiple organizations' social media accounts, and does this Facebook scheduler work well? I'll let Mike take that. That's a good social question.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you define well. Like I said, it works fairly well for multiple organizations, but it's still tricky, and it doesn't work as well as maybe some other schedulers, or, like, I mean, Hootsuite works just as well for multiple organizations. Sorry, that's a little bit of a vague answer, but it works as well as anything else, I would say.
And Floridel has a comment: Hootsuite limits how many posts you can schedule ahead of time unless you pay for a different level on your membership. So yes, there are definitely limitations on a lot of these platforms. We use Sprout Social, but that's also a paid platform, and then you pay per organization. So kind of depends on what you're willing to pay for too, for some of these. These are good questions. Christine has a hand up.
I was also going to say she has her hand up, but it might just be leftover from when we were doing the polls. But I do see that Ernesta has her hand up.
Thank you so much, Mike and Elise, for this information and Charitable Ventures for offering this, because social media is something interesting that battle on an ongoing basis as an organization. We don't have the marketing expertise that you bring, or the marketing expertise necessarily, that we all of us bring a little bit at a time, but we don't know if it's marketing or public promotion, is it advertising. So that's always a constant battle. However, I was able to walk away of what I'm able to do to bump up our efforts. And it is a balancing act, because we think the story is compelling, but others may not. So I'm not being an expert necessarily, that's a trial and error, but we're committed to it. So, and then also making it authentic. You know, are we just doing this because we got to get something posted, and that goes against who I am too? So that's a challenge at times. Is it newsworthy? Is it compelling? Is it coming from an authentic truth place? versus getting it out there and hoping no one against the wall. However, Facebook has been very friendly to us, but I have found LinkedIn has been very useful for us in how I sent the messaging from a professional leadership role of what you need to do for your personal body as a professional or as a leader. And that seems to be doing better than Facebook. However, Facebook with the photos, of course, that when we put something on Facebook, with my friends, I think it's very good information, but if there's not much response, but because it's not liked, does that really mean it's not a response? How do you know that? So those are just some skewed information that we always consider as well. And then for the first time, I posted something personal on Facebook, and it was just a happy Sunday. And I got a message that it was some of my comments may be filtered. I was pretty puzzled by that. That wow, this isn't no controversial message at all, Julie. That this was personal. And I thought, well, they're filtering comments that on a happy Sunday. I mean, that was the message in the photo. So it becomes awkward a little bit. However, I'm going to get to the point too. I see compelling stories, and the information that I'm able to use, what I'm taking away from today, is to use a little bit more budget for my Facebook. Right? That was like, oh, I can do that. Well, what's my next steps? Even though we may not be experts, what can we walk away with that I can increase our presence or our efforts in this effort? So that was a good takeaway, as well as a guiding social media policy. I didn't even think about that as a operating process. That I didn't even think about reaching that as a policy. So that was another good method that I'm going to be able to incorporate right away. So I really appreciate this. And then one comment was, with interns and volunteers, it's similar to the other person was asking about multiple accounts. We don't have multiple accounts as an organization or IT department. So when we bring in interns, I still need to manage that email account to make sure that it is properly used and it goes with the branding of the organization. Is there a method? Is there a process that can be considered of what and how can you manage interns or volunteers with the email? Because oftentimes they don't want to use their Facebook account for internship work. Is there something that I can consider them using to upload or comment? Because most of the time they have to use their personal, and that can get sticky because they may not want the Green Foundation on their personal page, and I totally understand that. But is there something that others may be doing? And then lastly, then I'll close, that Julie was mentioning about social media and being a part of the relevant conversation. So I was thinking, instead of maybe doing more social media, my thought would be maybe doing more phone banking, some other areas to get to your audience versus just social media. So putting in a balance that you bypass social media and just directly connect with perhaps your audience versus an audience that you don't know where they're not connecting with. But thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. I think really what I heard out of all this, and I think is important, is you need to figure out what works for you, right? Every group is different. Every organization is different. What works for one on LinkedIn might not work for someone else, or what works on Facebook might not work for, or again, maybe your newsletter is fantastic, and so you don't care too much about your social media platforms because your newsletter is doing really well and engaging. Also, the thing to consider too is, because and this is about figuring out who your audience is and who you're trying to serve and who you're trying to reach. You might have population that doesn't have access to technology, or maybe they don't have, they only have Facebook or something like that. And these are, like I said, these are the ways in which you need to figure out, again, who your audience is and what works for you. I think that's what's important. As for the question on the email or the intern, I mean, that's difficult too, because like I said, the social media platforms have made it very difficult, I guess in a good way though, for security purposes, to make sure that the person on there is actually who they are. And that's why there's also, you know, like two-factor authentication, things like that. You know, they want to make sure that whoever's on there is who it is. So there's no easy answer for that. I think it's just a matter of having a policy, I think, as to how you're going to navigate those volunteers or interns who are working for you.
Thank you, Mike. I'm seeing a question in the chat from Scott from a little earlier, asking you, do you have any suggestions on monitoring info being published about your organization, like Google Alerts, etc.?
Yeah, Google Alerts are fantastic. They are very useful. I would, if you're monitoring just one organization, especially, makes it a little bit easier. You can put in kind of any iteration that someone might mention of you, and set some robust Google Alerts. Those are great. There are paid programs that do this as well. Our company does use one of those. Mike, is there anything you'd want to add to that? A lot of like manual searching is pretty useful too.
Yeah, and I mean, the good thing is Google Alerts makes it really easy and it's free, obviously. So it's actually, that's probably pretty recommended for you guys. If you do reach a point where you feel like you need something paid, then that's kind of a different story. But I mean, Google has made it very easy with their alerts to where I would just recommend that.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And we have a couple more questions regarding in-house managers. One is from Chelsea. She says, do most organizations have an in-house marketing or social media manager, or is that a need that local nonprofits need assistance with? And since that belongs together, I'm going to ask Heriberto's question too. And any recommendations if you don't have an in-house manager, how to handle that?
Want to take that one, Lise?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's a tough question. I think it's kind of a range. We've, through Cornerstone, we do work with some nonprofits that have marketing and PR folks, and we work in conjunction with them. But there are plenty of nonprofits where it is outsourced or just kind of rolled into another position, or at worst, kind of an afterthought. But we understand that a lot of times, like, that's the last thing on someone's mind is sharing, when oftentimes it should be the first thing. I mean, it's hard to kind of get into the habit of always thinking, how can I share this information? Should this be public? How would we share this with the public? And so, yeah, it really is, it's such a wide range. But I do think, I mean, obviously, given our backgrounds, but I do think that it's important to keep that kind of top of mind and be thinking about, should this be a media alert? Should this be a social media post?
And I think the key with all that is making sure whoever it is that is dealing with your media relations, or especially social media, is kind of involved in these discussions of content or initiatives, or is involved in kind of these leadership discussions about what you guys are going to do. And because oftentimes, like the media relations person, or especially social media, is a very kind of taken for granted kind of thing. The social media person is kind of pushed to the side and not kind of keyed into a lot of these discussions. And then they're dumped all the content and information, and they're supposed to try to make sense of it all. When if they're involved in kind of in these leadership discussions, or just whatever these meetings are happening, it'll just help with their job.
Yeah, thank you. There is a question from Anne. She's wondering if you could say a little bit more about Google Alert.
Yeah, Google Alerts is just it's a dedicated site that Google has that you can plug in like keywords or things like that, and you can put in names or name of your organization, for example, and then it has different ways, either daily or at the time or weekly. It'll kind of give you an emailed report of where that keyword or name has been mentioned on the internet. And there's different filters and stuff that you can kind of figure out how you want it sent to you. But that's essentially what we
Yeah, thank you. And I saw Elise, thank you for posting that in the chat box, the link to the Google Alerts. So that's awesome. Thank you. There was one more question I saw from Chelsea earlier. She's asking, are there grants available to support marketing for nonprofits?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's always grants for this stuff, and I don't have any specifics off the top of my head, but definitely research. There's grants for nonprofits. I mean, on anything you can imagine, but definitely to support your marketing and even social media efforts.
I wanted to ask a question. One of the important things that you listed is knowing your audience. I'm wondering if there are any resources for better understanding the audience that you're targeting. So whether that's the platforms that they're more common to use, or the ways to reach out, or the times of day or the week to reach out. Do you have any resources for something like that?
Yeah, Facebook itself, Twitter used to, I'm not sure if they still do, maybe Mike does, but you can go into your admin section and it will show you the time of day that your followers are most active. And that can be really useful when scheduling things. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that they don't account for holidays. And so it might say, you know, Christmas might be on a Monday, and you might look at it and it says, oh, people are most active at 8 a.m. on Mondays, and that's not going to be the case on a holiday. So just kind of something to keep in mind. But yeah, that information is available on most of the platforms, and several of the aggregators. Hootsuite, I think, also has a section where you can look for times. Mike, do you have more info on that? Mike's a little more up to date on the social since I backed off of that.
Well, the key is, you know, because you can get bombarded though with numbers and analytics, and Google Analytics has for your website or things like that. The key is to identify what, like, what are you trying to accomplish? Like, what is your goal? Like, what are you, and then from there, then you can try to measure that in finding the analytics and numbers that correspond to your goal. But there's definitely easy ways in your social media analytics to kind of figure out, who your audience is. Are they more male or female? Like, what are their ages? Like, what cities do they come from? Those are fairly easy to get. But again, if you need help with any of that, I think me and Elise are available to kind of help you manage that.
Thanks so much. That's really helpful. Thank you all for your participation in the chat as well. There's definitely some really great sharing going on in the chat, which will be accessible to all of you as part of the recording. So definitely, take down these links, but we really appreciate your participation there as well. So let's see, are there any more questions that anybody either wants to put in the chat box or ask out loud? We can take just a few more minutes if there's something else.
Annie, that's a good tip there. Having your social media person do regular check-ins with the team. It really is important that the social media person be up to date on everything that's going on. They're going to need that information, and they should really know what's going on as it's happening. One sort of roadblock that we come across with some of our clients is that they're not thinking social first, nor should they. That's not necessarily their job. But if we're doing their social and we don't know what's happening, there's a disconnect there, and we may be getting comments about something or questions online about something that we don't have the information on. And so just having that person be really plugged into what's going on so they can share things quickly and also respond to things with accurate information is good. It helps everyone. Ooh, best place to find interns. That's a tough question. We've had pretty good luck with word of mouth and through our contact network, just getting people that have good work ethic and are interested in marketing and PR. I know that Indeed seems to be pretty popular for finding employees, and going straight to colleges too. Yes, Sarah. Best at social media. They're going to be on TikTok.
Elise, Scott has a question in the chat saying he's not very familiar with social media, but he wants to ask if there's a way to identify social media users in discrete geographic areas.
Mike, you want to take that? We did a lot of this through some census work recently.
What does that mean? Discrete geographic areas?
So I think he's asking, like, is there a way to identify the social media users that are in a particular kind of narrowly defined geographic area? So maybe in a neighborhood in Santa Ana or in a specific town in Orange County.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of the analytics on your social media can drill down pretty specific to those things. So it's just a matter of what platform you're looking for. Like I said, I think if you need something specific, I think me and Elise can probably help you with that.
Thank you. And just to reiterate to everybody, in the email that comes out after this session, we will include the contact information for Elise and Mike. So you will have that in multiple locations if you do need to reach out with any of these follow-up questions. Thank you both for being so generous with your time as to invite those follow-up questions. I know it's very appreciated. All right, everyone, we are coming, let's see, I've got 10:10. So if there are not any further questions, please allow me to thank you both on behalf of all of Charitable Ventures and everyone on this call. Elise and Mike, this information has been invaluable. I know lots of folks in the chat are talking about how timely it is and really useful for them. So we can't thank you enough for sharing. This has been really fabulous, and we can't wait to share out the recording and the contact information and the resources in the email afterwards. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you for being a part of this for us. I know that our audience here is really appreciative of it as well.
Thank you.
Thanks
This
for
has
having
been
us.
really fun.
Wonderful. Okay, everyone, the survey is, Jasmine just dropped it back in the chat box. So if you have 5 minutes right now, do it, get it off your plate. We appreciate the feedback and the information so much. So please take that survey. We will send out the follow-up email, like I said, that has the recording, that has the contact information, that has the slide deck. So you'll be able to access all of this info after the fact. And we thank you for being here. We'll keep you posted on what's coming up next in our Mission Forward workshop series. Thank you all.